"You're just a burden," my dad shouted, his voice echoing through our Phoenix dining room. I stood there, stunned, my birthday cake still untouched on the table. The candles flickered like my hopes for a normal family celebration. It was supposed to be a happy day, my 26th birthday. But instead, I was watching my father's face twist with disgust as he stared at me. My name is Tessa Morgan, and I work as a remote data analyst for Crimson Harbor Group, one of the largest logistics companies in the country. I had been living back home in Phoenix for the past 2 years, helping my family through what they called temporary financial difficulties. What I didn't realize was how temporary my welcome would be. "Did you hear me?" Dad continued, his voice getting louder. "All you do is sit in that room all day, pretending to work on your computer. Meanwhile, your mother and I are struggling to keep this house running, and your brother Tyler needs money for his business ventures." I wanted to tell him the truth, that I had been quietly paying their credit card bills for months, that my pretend work was earning me over $4,000 a month, that without my contributions, they would have lost the house already. But something in his eyes told me this wasn't the time for explanations. "Robert, maybe we should talk about this later," my mom, Patricia, said softly from the kitchen doorway. Her voice carried that familiar tone of someone trying to keep the peace while secretly agreeing with the aggressor. "No, Patricia. I'm tired of walking on eggshells around her. She needs to hear this." Dad turned back to me, his finger pointing accusingly. "You think because you went to college that you're better than us? Well, let me tell you something. Your fancy degree hasn't done much for you, has it? Living at home at 26 like some kind of failure." The words stung, because part of me had wondered the same thing. But I stayed, because they needed help, because Tyler kept asking for money for his guaranteed investment opportunities, because Mom mentioned how stressed Dad was about the bills. I thought I was being a good daughter. "I contribute to this household," I said quietly, trying to keep my voice steady. Dad laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Contribute? You eat our food, use our electricity, take up space. What exactly do you contribute?" The irony was suffocating. In my laptop bag, just feet away, were the bank statements showing the payments I had been making. The credit cards in Dad's wallet, the ones Mom used for groceries, Tyler's gas card. I had been covering the minimum payments and often much more. But looking at their faces now, I realized they had no idea. They thought I was just their unemployed daughter, living off their generosity instead of the other way around. Something dark flickered in my mind as I watched Dad's satisfied expression. If they wanted to see what life looked like without my burden, maybe it was time to show them. Growing up, I had always been the responsible one. While Tyler spent his teenage years getting into trouble and charming his way out of consequences, I focused on my studies. I graduated summa cum laude with a degree in mathematics and landed my first job at a tech startup before I was 22. When the startup was acquired by Crimson Harbor Group, they offered me a remote position that paid incredibly well. The decision to move back home came after a series of late-night phone calls from Mom. "Your father is so stressed about money," she would say. "Tyler's business needs some startup capital, and with the mortgage and everything..." Her voice would trail off, heavy with unspoken expectations. I told myself it was temporary. I would help them get back on their feet, save some money myself, and then find my own place. What I didn't anticipate was how quickly I would become invisible in my own family's financial picture. It started small. Tyler mentioned his credit card was maxed out, and could I help with a payment just this once? Dad's business credit line got declined at a client dinner. Could I cover it? Mom's store card was overdue, and she was embarrassed to tell Dad. Each time they promised to pay me back, and each time I said yes. Within 6 months, I was essentially managing their entire credit portfolio. I had my own tracking spreadsheet, 7 different cards, 2 car loans, and the mortgage. I paid minimums on everything and tried to chip away at the principal when my paycheck allowed. They never asked how I was managing it all on what they assumed was unemployment benefits. The strange part was how they treated me despite my contributions. Dad would make comments about me living like a teenager in their house. Mom would sigh about having an extra mouth to feed. Tyler would joke about his freeloader sister when his friends came over. I told myself they didn't mean it, that they were just stressed about money. But deep down, I started to resent the way they spoke about me, as if I was some kind of charity case they were generously supporting. The warning signs were there. Last month, Tyler had mentioned something about the three of them wanting to downsize, and maybe I should start looking for my own place. Dad had become increasingly critical of my work schedule, questioning why I spent so much time on my computer if I wasn't bringing in real money. Mom had started making pointed comments about independence and responsibility, but I ignored the signs because I thought I was helping. I thought that's what family did for each other. I thought that love and loyalty would be enough to bridge the gap between their perception and reality. I was wrong. Looking at Dad's face now, twisted with contempt and frustration, I realized they had never seen me as their daughter who was sacrificing to help them. They saw me as dead weight, and they had decided it was time to cut me loose. The birthday cake sat melting on the table, and I wondered if this would be the last time I tried to save them from themselves. "I think it's time you found your own place," Mom said, her voice barely above a whisper. She couldn't look at me directly, instead focusing on wiping down the already clean kitchen counter. "Your father and I have been talking, and we think it would be best for everyone if you moved on." The words hit me like a physical blow. I had been expecting something like this since Dad's outburst, but hearing it from Mom made it real. Tyler stood in the doorway, arms crossed, nodding in agreement. His expression was smug, like he had been waiting for this moment. "When?" I asked, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. "Well," Dad interjected, "we were thinking tonight would be good. No point in dragging this out." Tonight, my birthday. They wanted me gone on my birthday. I looked around the living room where I had spent the last 2 years, at the bills scattered on Dad's desk that I had been secretly managing, at the family photos where I smiled obliviously next to people who apparently saw me as nothing more than an inconvenience. "I see," I said. "I'll pack my things." "Don't make this dramatic," Tyler said. "It's not personal. You're 26, Tessa. Most people our age have been on their own for years." I almost laughed. Tyler was 28 and had moved back home twice in the past 5 years. Each time, Mom and Dad welcomed him with open arms and helped him get back on his feet. But apparently that grace didn't extend to daughters who actually contributed financially. "You're right," I said. "I should have been on my own years ago." As I walked to my room, I could hear them talking in the kitchen, their voices lighter now, almost relieved. Dad was already making plans for converting my room into Tyler's home office. Mom was talking about how nice it would be to have the house back to just the 3 of them. I sat on my bed and opened my laptop. The banking app loaded, showing my checking account balance and the linked credit accounts I had been managing. 7 credit cards, all with my bank account set up for automatic payments. All of them currently in good standing because of my diligence. For 2 years, I had been the invisible safety net keeping their financial lives from collapsing. I had sacrificed my own independence, my own apartment fund, my own dreams of traveling and building my own life, all to make sure they didn't drown in debt. And their response was to throw me out on my birthday, because I was a burden. I stared at the screen, my finger hovering over the account management options. Each credit card had my information as the authorized payer. With a few clicks, I could remove my bank account from their automatic payment systems. With a few more clicks, I could freeze the cards entirely, claiming security concerns. They wanted to see what life looked like without their burden. Maybe it was time to show them exactly what that meant. The thought should have scared me, but instead, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Power. For the first time in 2 years, I was about to make a decision based on what I wanted, not what they needed. I began to type. I spent the next 3 hours methodically packing my life into boxes while my family celebrated downstairs. Through my bedroom floor, I could hear Tyler telling some story that made Dad laugh. Really laugh, in a way I hadn't heard in months. Mom was humming while she cleaned up the birthday cake that never got eaten. The sound of their happiness at my departure was more painful than any of Dad's cruel words. Around midnight, I carried my boxes to my car. No one offered to help. Dad was watching television, Mom was reading in bed, and Tyler had gone out with friends. I might as well have been a ghost for all the attention they paid to my leaving. As I loaded the last box, Tyler came home. He walked past me without a word, then stopped at the front door. "You'll thank us for this someday," he said. "You were getting too comfortable. This will be good for you." I wanted to tell him about the spreadsheet on my laptop, about the $1,400 I had transferred to his credit card just last week when he called crying about missing a payment. I wanted to show him the bank statements proving I had been covering his car insurance for 8 months. Instead, I just nodded. "You're probably right," I said. The cheap motel room I checked into smelled like industrial cleaner and disappointment. I sat on the scratchy bedspread with my laptop open, staring at the banking interface. It was 2 a.m., and I was finally alone with my thoughts and the full scope of what I had been doing for my family. I pulled up my personal spreadsheet and calculated the total. Over $34,000 I had paid toward their debts in the past 2 years. Minimum payments, overdraft fees, late charges, interest. I had covered it all. My own savings account, which should have been enough for a down payment on a house, was nearly empty. The credit card companies made it easy to remove myself as an authorized payer. A few security questions, a couple of clicks, and suddenly their automatic payment systems had no funding source. I didn't cancel the cards entirely. That seemed too cruel. I just removed my financial responsibility for their choices. But as I worked through each account, I discovered something that made my blood run cold. Tyler's business credit card, the one he claimed was for legitimate investments, had charges I had never seen before. Luxury hotels in Las Vegas, high-end restaurants, a jewelry store purchase for $8,000. All of it paid for with money I had been contributing. I dug deeper into Dad's accounts and found similar patterns. Business dinners that were actually expensive steakhouse visits with his golf buddies. Office supplies that were clearly personal electronics. Mom's store card showed purchases for designer handbags and spa treatments, all while she told me they were struggling to make ends meet. They hadn't been struggling. They had been living beyond their means and using my money to subsidize their lifestyle while treating me like a charity case. My phone buzzed, a text from Mom. "Hope you find a nice place. We love you." I stared at the message for a long time. If they loved me, why had they made me feel like such a burden? If they cared about my well-being, why had they never asked about my job or my income? Why had they taken my help for granted while making me feel ashamed for needing a place to live? I turned off my phone and closed my laptop. Tomorrow, I would drive to San Diego and start over. Crimson Harbor Group had been asking me to relocate to their West Coast offices for months, offering a significant salary increase and relocation assistance. I had turned them down because I thought my family needed me. It was time to start thinking about what I needed. As I tried to fall asleep on the uncomfortable motel bed, I wondered how long it would take them to realize what had happened. Their credit cards would start declining within days. The automatic payments that had been keeping them afloat would bounce. Their carefully maintained credit scores would begin to crumble. Part of me felt guilty for what was coming, but a larger part of me felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Freedom. I woke up to 17 missed calls. It was 7 a.m., exactly 12 hours since I had left, and my phone was buzzing constantly. Dad, Mom, Tyler. They were taking turns calling, leaving increasingly frantic voicemails. I listened to them while I packed my remaining toiletries. "Tessa, honey, call me back. There's been some kind of mistake with the credit cards." Mom's voice was tight with worry. "Tessa, what the hell did you do? My card got declined at breakfast." Tyler, angry but not yet understanding the scope of the problem. Call me back immediately. We need to talk. Dad, using his authority voice like I was still a child who could be commanded. I drove toward San Diego while they called. 3 hours into the drive, the voicemails became more desperate. Tessa, please, I know you're upset, but we can work this out. Just call me back. Mom, now clearly panicking. The bank says you removed yourself from all the accounts. What the hell does that mean? Tyler, finally beginning to understand. You vindictive little... Just call me back. Now. Dad, no longer trying to hide his rage. I pulled over at a gas station and finally answered when Mom called for the 4th time that hour. Tessa, thank God. Where are you? What happened with the credit cards? I'm not responsible for your credit cards anymore, I said calmly. I removed my bank account from your automatic payment systems. Silence. Then, what do you mean, your bank account? Mom, who did you think was paying those bills? Another long pause. Your father... I thought... We assumed... You assumed wrong. But how... Where did you get that kind of money? I almost laughed. From my job, the one Dad thinks is pretend, the one Tyler jokes about. I've been working remotely for Crimson Harbor Group for 2 years, making $55,000 a year. I've been paying your bills because I thought you needed help. I could hear her talking to someone in the background, probably Dad. When she came back on the line, her voice was small. Tessa, we didn't know. If you had just told us. I tried to tell you. Remember when I said I was contributing to the household? When I mentioned my work? You never listened because you had already decided I was a failure living off your charity. That's not... We didn't mean... Yes, you did. And that's fine. But I'm not your safety net anymore. I hung up and turned off my phone again. The drive to San Diego gave me time to think about the magnitude of what I had just done. Without my payments, their credit cards would start declining immediately. Late fees would kick in within days. Their credit scores would tank within weeks. The lifestyle they had been living, the expensive dinners, the shopping trips, Tyler's business expenses, would come to an abrupt halt. I felt a twinge of guilt, but it was quickly overwhelmed by anger. They had been living off my income while treating me like a burden. They had been using my money to fund their luxuries while making me feel ashamed for needing a place to live. They had thrown me out on my birthday. After 2 years of financial support, they didn't even realize they were receiving. When I reached San Diego that evening, I called my contact at Crimson Harbor Group's West Coast office. Tessa, I was hoping to hear from you. Are you reconsidering our offer? I am. How quickly could I start? How about Monday? We've been holding a position for you. When can you be here? I'm already here. The relief in my manager's voice was palpable. Perfect. Let me help you find a place. We have corporate housing available, and there's a great apartment complex near the office with immediate availability. For the first time in months, I felt like someone wanted me around. By Sunday, I had a furnished 1-bedroom apartment 3 blocks from the beach. By Monday, I was sitting in my new office, signing paperwork for a position that paid nearly $70,000 a year. By Tuesday, I had turned my phone back on to discover 43 missed calls and 27 text messages. The messages painted a picture of escalating panic back in Phoenix. Saturday. Call us back. This is serious. Dad. Sunday. Tessa. Your father had to cancel his golf weekend because his card was declined. Please call. Mom. Monday. My car payment bounced. I could lose my car. Call me. Tyler. Tuesday. The mortgage payment failed. We could lose the house. Where are you? Dad. Wednesday. I know you're angry, but this is going too far. Call your mother. Tyler. I sat in my new office, looking out at the San Diego skyline, and felt absolutely nothing. No guilt, no satisfaction, just a strange emptiness where my family anxiety used to live. My new colleague, Jessica, knocked on my door. "How are you settling in?" "Better than expected," I said. "It's nice to be wanted somewhere." "Well, you came highly recommended. The Phoenix team spoke very highly of your work. They were sad to lose you." "Their loss," I said, and meant it. That evening, I walked to the beach and called my family back. Dad answered on the first ring. "Tessa, where the hell are you?" "San Diego." "San Diego? What are you doing there?" "I got a promotion. I moved." I could hear him talking to Mom and Tyler in the background. When he came back on the line, his tone had shifted to the fake friendly voice he used when he wanted something. That's great, honey. Congratulations. Listen, we need to talk about this credit card situation. There's been a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding. I removed myself from your payment systems because I no longer live with you and I'm no longer responsible for your bills." "But Tessa," Mom's voice now, apparently on speaker, "we didn't realize you were paying those bills. If we had known..." "You would have what? Treated me better? Not thrown me out on my birthday? Not called me a burden for 2 years?" Silence. "We were stressed," Tyler said finally. "We didn't mean those things." "Yes, you did. And that's okay. You wanted me to be independent, and now I am." "But the house," Dad said, desperation creeping into his voice. "The mortgage payment failed. We could lose everything." "Then I guess you'll need to figure out how to pay your own bills." "Tessa," Mom was crying now, "we're family. Families help each other." "You're right," I said. "Families do help each other. For 2 years I helped you. I paid your bills, covered your emergencies, and subsidized your lifestyle. And in return, you made me feel like a failure and threw me out the moment you decided I was inconvenient." "We'll make it up to you," Dad said quickly. "Come home. We'll talk this through." "I am home," I said, looking out at the ocean. "This is my home now." I hung up and blocked their numbers. The next morning, I woke up to sunshine streaming through my windows and the sound of waves in the distance. For the first time in 2 years, I checked my bank account without anxiety. My money was mine again. My life was mine again. I made coffee and sat on my small balcony, watching surfers catch the morning waves. My phone buzzed with an email from my new manager, praising a project I had completed the day before and asking if I'd be interested in leading a larger initiative. I smiled and started typing my response. It felt good to be valued for what I contributed, rather than resented for what I needed. The ocean stretched endlessly before me, full of possibilities I had forgotten I was allowed to want. 3 weeks into my new life in San Diego, I got the call I had been expecting. It was from Aunt Diane, Dad's sister, who lived in Tucson. "Tessa, honey, I heard about what happened. Your parents are in quite a mess." I sipped my morning coffee from my balcony, watching joggers on the beach below. "What kind of mess?" "Well," Diane's voice was careful. "They had to sell Robert's truck to make the mortgage payment, and Tyler moved back in with them because he couldn't afford his apartment anymore. Patricia's been calling around the family, asking for loans. I felt a flicker of something. Not quite satisfaction, but a sense of completion." "I see. She wanted me to call you. Said you weren't answering their calls." "I'm not." Diane was quiet for a moment. "Tessa, I know they hurt you, but they're family. Maybe there's a way to work this out." I had expected this call. In our family, women were always expected to be the peacemakers, to absorb the pain and smooth things over. I had been playing that role for 26 years. "Aunt Diane, did they tell you I was paying their credit card bills for 2 years?" "What? No, Robert said you were unemployed." "I wasn't unemployed. I was supporting them financially while they called me a burden and made me feel ashamed for needing a place to live. When I tried to tell them about my job, they dismissed it as not real work. Then they threw me out on my birthday." Another long pause. Oh, honey, I had no idea. They didn't want you to know because it didn't fit their narrative. They wanted to be the generous parents supporting their struggling daughter, not the struggling parents being supported by their successful daughter. Tessa, I'm so sorry. It's not your fault. But I'm not fixing this for them. They made their choices. After I hung up, I realized something had shifted. The anger that had been burning in my chest for weeks was fading, replaced by something cleaner: indifference. They were no longer my problem to solve. 2 months later, I was promoted to senior data analyst with a corner office and a view of the harbor. My new salary was $85,000 a year, plus bonuses. I had started dating a marine biologist named Kyle, who thought my career was fascinating and never once questioned whether my work was real. The apartment complex where I lived had become my community. I knew my neighbors, joined the building's book club, and had season tickets to the local theater. For the first time in my adult life, I felt like I belonged somewhere. That's when Mom showed up. I came home from work on a Tuesday to find her sitting in the lobby of my building, looking older and more tired than I remembered. "Hi, sweetheart," she said, standing up uncertainly. My heart clenched, but I kept my voice steady. "What are you doing here, Mom?" "We need to talk. Can I come up?" Against my better judgment, I led her into my apartment. She looked around at my furniture, my view, my life, with a mixture of pride and confusion. "This is beautiful, Tessa. You've done well for yourself." "Thank you." She sat on my couch, twisting her hands in her lap. "We lost the house." I felt a stab of something. Grief, maybe, for the home I had grown up in. But it passed quickly. "I'm sorry to hear that. We're living with your Uncle Gary now, all 3 of us in his guest room. That must be difficult." "Tessa." She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. "We were wrong. We were so wrong about everything. If we had known you were helping us, we never would have..." "You would have what? Treated me with respect? Asked about my life? Valued my contributions?" "Yes," she whispered. "Mom, the problem wasn't that you didn't know I was paying your bills. The problem was that you didn't care enough to find out who I really was or what I was doing with my life. You had decided I was a failure, and that was easier than actually paying attention to me." She was crying now, and despite everything, it hurt to see. But I had learned the difference between feeling sorry for someone and feeling responsible for fixing their problems. "I came here to ask you to come home, to help us get back on our feet." I looked out at the ocean, at the life I had built, at the future stretching ahead of me. "Mom, I am home." 6 months later, I heard through Aunt Diane that Dad had filed for bankruptcy and Tyler was working at a call center. Mom had taken a job at a grocery store, her first job in 15 years. They had moved into a small rental house and were slowly rebuilding their lives. I felt a distant sadness for them, the way you might feel sad about strangers you read about in the newspaper. They were no longer the center of my emotional universe. I was sitting on my balcony, watching the sunset paint the ocean gold, when Kyle called to tell me about a research expedition he'd been invited to join in Costa Rica. "Want to come with me?" he asked. "I know you can work remotely from anywhere." I thought about the scared, angry girl who had driven out of Phoenix 7 months ago, carrying her life in boxes and her hurt in her heart. I thought about the family who had taught me that love came with conditions and respect had to be earned through suffering. Then I looked at my laptop, at my bank account with 6 months of expenses saved, at my calendar full of work I enjoyed, and people who valued my contributions. "Yes," I said, "I'd love to." As I hung up the phone, I realized something important. Revenge hadn't been about hurting them. It had been about refusing to hurt myself anymore. It had been about choosing my own life over their comfort, my own truth over their narratives, my own worth over their judgments. The ocean stretched endlessly before me, and for the first time in my life, I felt just as boundless,